Extinction is supposed to be the end of the story, the final curtain call, the fossil record's equivalent of a mic drop. But what if some of those prehistoric headliners never actually left the stage? Turns out nature's really bad at sticking to the script. Scientists have declared plenty of animals extinct, only to have them show up later like, "Oh hey, were you looking for me?" Some sneak back centuries later. Others might still be out there, just really, really good at playing hide and seek. We're talking ancient fish that pop up in fishermen's nets, giant birds that might be roaming the wrong parts of New Zealand, and river dolphins that ghosted everyone, literally. Now, we're not saying there's a velociraptor in your backyard, probably, but science has made enough oopsies to keep the cryptid crowd on life support. And hey, if the coelacanth can pull a 65 million year disappearing act, who's to say what else might be lurking in the ocean's basement or the backwoods of Tasmania? So, buckle up, because today we're diving into the weirdest, most suspiciously alive extinct animals out there. Some were rediscovered, some are still MIA, and a few, well, they might just be legends with really good PR. In 1938, a South African museum curator named Marjorie Courtenay Latimer opened up a fisherman's catch and found something that absolutely should not have existed. It had lobed fins, a weird tail, and a face that looked like it had seen some stuff. She had no idea what it was, but she knew it wasn't normal. What she'd stumbled on was a coelacanth, an ancient fish thought to have gone extinct around the same time the dinosaurs called it quits. This thing was supposed to be long gone, fossilized, and filed away in textbooks. Instead, it was hanging out near Madagascar, minding its business in the deep sea. The scientific world collectively lost its mind. Coelacanths were originally known only from fossils dating back 400 million years. They were the weird lobe-finned fishes, possibly related to the first creatures that slithered out of the oceans and started the whole legs thing. Their extinction date? Roughly 65 million years ago, just in time for the asteroid party. Except no one told the coelacanths. Turns out they'd just moved deeper. Literally. These fish live hundreds of meters below the surface in volcanic caves and are built for low-energy, slow-motion survival. They grow up to 6 feet long, give live birth, and have a weird hinge in their skull that lets them open their mouths extra wide. Which is honestly kind of unsettling. When the first live one was found, scientists thought it had to be some holdout survivor. Then they found more. Not just in one spot either. 2 different species popped up, one near the Comoros Islands, and one near Indonesia. These weren't leftover relics clinging to life. They were part of an actual thriving lineage no one had noticed for millions of years. That's not barely hanging on. That's surprise. We never left. It shook up everything paleontologists thought they knew about extinction. Suddenly, the fossil record looked a little less final. If a fish could fake its own death for 65 million years, what else was down there? And yes, people immediately started tossing around words like living fossil, which is catchy but slightly misleading. Coelacanths have changed a bit over time. They're not identical clones of their ancient ancestors, but they've kept the same general vibe. Slow, chunky, mysterious. They're also terrible at surviving modern fishing methods. Accidental bycatch, pollution, and habitat destruction are all real threats. So while they survived the Cretaceous extinction, they might not survive us, which is kind of embarrassing. Still, the coelacanth proves one thing very clearly. Sometimes, extinct just means you haven't looked in the right cave yet. If you've ever wanted a pet that looks like a dog, acts like a wolf, hops like a kangaroo, and carries its babies in a pouch, congratulations, you just described the thylacine. Also known as the Tasmanian tiger, this marsupial carnivore was basically Australia's answer to what if evolution just got weird with it? Thylacines once roamed all over mainland Australia and New Guinea, but by the time Europeans showed up, they were mostly hanging on in Tasmania, which is unfortunate because Europeans were very good at wiping out anything that looked like it might threaten their sheep. By the early 1900s, the thylacine population was already crashing, thanks to a lethal combo of bounty hunting, habitat loss, disease, and a PR campaign that painted them as sheep-slaying monsters. Spoiler, they weren't that great at killing sheep. The last known thylacine died in Hobart Zoo in 1936, in a cage, cold and neglected. The species was officially declared extinct in the 1980s. Case closed, right? Except it never really felt closed, because since 1936, there have been hundreds of alleged thylacine sightings. Farmers in Tasmania swear they've seen stripy tails disappearing into the bush. Hikers report weird howls at night. Some people even claim to have photos, usually grainy, blurry, and very conveniently lacking in detail, like every cryptid sighting ever. The sightings aren't limited to Tasmania either. Somehow this marsupial Houdini has reportedly been seen in mainland Australia too, despite being extinct there for thousands of years. Either thylacines learned to swim across the Bass Strait, or Australia just has a lot of really weird-looking dogs. What makes the thylacine case extra compelling is that these aren't just internet cranks or Bigfoot fanboys doing the spotting. Some of the reports come from scientists, park rangers, and even government officials. In 2017, Australia's Department of Environment received multiple credible reports from far north Queensland, which sparked a short-lived hunt for the animal. They found nothing, but the idea refused to die. Then there's the footage. Over the years, a handful of videos have surfaced showing canid-looking creatures with stripy butts and stiff gaits. Some of them are almost convincing until you realize they could just be dingoes, foxes, or extremely unphotogenic dogs. Or just people really wanting to believe. Which, to be fair, is understandable. Thylacines were weird, wonderful, and tragically misjudged. Who wouldn't want them back? Now enter the scientists with test tubes. There's an actual plan underway to de-extinct the thylacine using advanced gene editing and the DNA of its closest living relative, the numbat, which is adorable, tiny, and absolutely not ready for this level of responsibility. Still, teams like the one at the University of Melbourne say they're serious, extracting viable DNA from museum specimens and splicing it into marsupial embryos. It's Jurassic Park meets Aussie wildlife conservation. But until that actually happens, we're stuck with a Schrödinger's tiger. Maybe extinct, maybe just elusive. Maybe both. Is the thylacine still out there? Realistically, probably not. But it's also not completely impossible. And unlike, say, a plesiosaur in a Scottish lake, a few surviving thylacines hiding in the wilds of Tasmania doesn't sound that absurd. Remote? Sure. Unlikely? Definitely. But not impossible. After all, Australia is home to venomous mammals, giant flightless birds, and sharks that glow in the dark. A marsupial tiger with a bad attitude wouldn't even crack the top 5 weird things still walking around. Imagine an ostrich, but taller. And meaner. And now imagine you're a human with a stick trying to survive in prehistoric New Zealand, where this bird, the moa, has exactly 0 natural predators and an attitude problem. That's the kind of setup the early Maori walked into when they arrived on the islands around the 13th century. Moa were the undisputed lords of the land, and then, not long after humans showed up, they weren't. There were 9 species of Moa, ranging from turkey-sized to the absurdly huge Dinornis robustus, which stood over 12 feet tall with its neck stretched. That's basketball hoop height. They weighed as much as 500 pounds, couldn't fly, obviously, and walked around like they owned the place, which they basically did, until hungry humans with fire and tools arrived. What followed was less thrilling survival saga and more very fast extinction. In less than 200 years, MOA went from everywhere to nowhere. They were easy years, big, slow, and with no defense against organized hunters. Their eggs were also massive, about the size of a rugby ball, and probably delicious. The Maori didn't waste time. By around 1400 CE, all 9 species were gone. Wiped out. A complete ecological collapse followed too, since moa played a major role in the island's ecosystem. Their extinction even contributed to the host's eagle going extinct, because that bird's whole business model was eating giant birds, and it suddenly had no clients. But are they really gone? Here's where things get suspicious. For over a century, there have been rumors of moa sightings in New Zealand's remote Fiordland region. It's a wild, mountainous, fog-soaked area that's still largely untouched and eerily quiet. Trampers, bush pilots, and hunters have reported glimpses of large ostrich-like birds vanishing into the trees. In the 1990s, a cryptozoologist, because of course, launched expeditions based on multiple reports. They found big footprints, they found broken branches, they found 0 moa. But the stories didn't stop. The Maori also have legends of the kura te ao, a rare sacred bird that some believe could be a surviving moa species. Combine that with the region's inaccessibility and the fact that moa were mostly forest dwellers anyway, and you've got just enough ambiguity to keep the dream alive. Of course, there are problems, like the complete absence of physical evidence, no droppings, no feathers, no roadkill, no cell phone pics. In a world where even Bigfoot would probably have an Instagram by now, the MOA remains frustratingly analog. Still, scientists haven't totally written it off. New Zealand's terrain is notoriously difficult to survey, and some believe a small relict population of a smaller moa species could theoretically survive undetected. It wouldn't be a 12-foot monster, more like a big pissed-off emu, but still not extinct. Adding to the confusion, moa bones are everywhere. Their remains are well preserved and constantly turning up in caves and swamps. Sometimes they're so fresh looking that people assume the birds must have died recently. Spoiler, they didn't. Moa just hang around geologically, like weird feathery ghosts. Could de-extinction save the MOA? Technically, sure. There's preserved DNA in museum specimens, and a few biotech firms have listed the MOA on their maybe someday revival wish lists. But like with the thylacine, the logistics are nightmarish. You'd need an ostrich or emu surrogate, a functioning genome, and a reason not to spend that money on literally anything else. Also, what happens when you unleash an 8-foot flightless bird into modern New Zealand? Tourism ad? Horror movie? So here we are. Giant bird, officially extinct, probably still extinct, but maybe, still stomping around in the backwoods of Fiordland, just waiting for someone to snap a photo that isn't taken on a potato. If the coelacanth is the poster child for extinction comebacks, the baiji is the tragic, cautionary tale. This isn't an ancient creature that fooled the fossil record, it's a modern species that humanity watched vanish in real time. And then, weirdly, maybe didn't. The baiji, also known as the Yangtze River dolphin, was a long-snouted, milky-eyed freshwater cetacean that swam exclusively in China's Yangtze River. It had been around for over 20 million years, gliding through muddy waters like some kind of aquatic unicorn. Which is fitting because it was also called the goddess of the Yangtze in Chinese folklore. Elegant, elusive, and about as lucky as a dodo in a shotgun factory. By the late 20th century, the Yangtze had transformed from a biodiverse powerhouse into an industrial traffic jam. Between overfishing, boat strikes, illegal electric fishing, pollution, and the construction of massive dams, the Baiji was living on borrowed time. Its population plummeted. Conservationists rang alarm bells. Governments set up reserves. It was too late. In 2006, a major expedition scoured the Yangtze with boats, sonar, and every marine biologist who could be convinced to squint into murky water for days. They found nothing. No clicks, no movement, not even a ripple. So the Baiji became the first cetacean declared functionally extinct, a phrase that basically means we're not 100% sure it's dead, but there aren't enough left to matter. And then came 2007. A Chinese man named Wang Keqiang, an amateur conservationist, claimed to have seen a Baiji swimming in the river. He even had video footage. Cue the chaos. Scientists reviewed the tape. Some said, yes, that's a Baiji. Others said, maybe it's a finless porpoise. Others said, why is this always filmed on the lowest resolution known to man? After that, more silence. Another possible sighting popped up in 2016. Another blurry figure breaking the water surface. But no clear confirmation and no acoustic evidence. The Baiji, if it was still out there, was doing a phenomenal job of ghosting humanity, which would honestly be fair. What makes the Baiji case different from things like the thylacine or moa is that this wasn't some ancient mystery or remote wilderness creature. This was a scientifically documented, recently alive species in one of the most populated countries on Earth. We knew its habits, its sounds, its exact range, and we still let it disappear. But here's the twist. Unlike many, maybe extinct animals, the Baiji could survive under the radar. It's a quiet animal in a big, noisy river. The Yangtze is massive, full of ship noise, and has tons of side channels. Detecting one or two surviving Baiji would be incredibly difficult, even with good equipment. Also enter the finless porpoise, China's other freshwater cetacean. It's often confused for a Baiji and still hangs out in the same waters, which is great for confusion, terrible for clarity. Conservationists are now trying to save that species from following the same tragic route. Meanwhile, the Baiji exists in this limbo, functionally extinct, but maybe not totally gone. If it is still out there, it's probably alone. Maybe a handful, not breeding, not bouncing back, just surviving quietly against all odds in a river that used to be its sanctuary, which is depressing as hell, but also kind of haunting. Because if the Baiji is gone, it's not just another extinct species, it's a symbol of exactly how fast humans can erase something that survived for millions of years. And if it's not gone, well, we better do better this time. If there were an award for most dramatic bird disappearance, the ivory-billed woodpecker would win, fly off, and then be declared extinct again before the ceremony even ended. This bird was once the Elvis of the American Southeast's swamp forests. Large, flashy, loud, and impossible to miss. With a wingspan up to 30 inches and a striking white and black plumage, plus a punk rock red crest if male, the ivory bill didn't exactly blend in. It thrived in old-growth forests, where it slammed its massive bill into trees to dig out beetle larvae like a jackhammer on espresso. And then we chopped down its home. By the early 20th century, logging had annihilated the ivory bill's habitat across the southeastern U.S. It was last officially seen in 1944 in the Singer Tract of Louisiana. After that, nothing. Decades passed. Ornithologists mourned, birders dreamed, and cryptozoologists added it to their ever-growing, maybe not dead, checklist. Then came the 2004 resurrection. A research team from Cornell University claimed they had spotted an ivory bill in Arkansas. They even had video footage, a few grainy frames of a large bird flying through the trees. The team dropped the scientific equivalent of a mic, publishing in Science and launching an all-out search mission. Funding poured in. Optimism soared. Birders everywhere suddenly had purpose. But the footage was questionable. Some experts said it was just a pileated woodpecker, a very similar and not extinct species with slightly different markings, and a knack for causing ID panic. Others insisted the flight pattern and markings were distinctly ivory-billed. The debate got nasty. Careers were staked, names were called, scientific journals basically became passive-aggressive battlegrounds. More sightings trickled in. Reports came from Louisiana, Florida, even Cuba. Some were backed by audio recordings of loud double knocks, a sound the ivory bill supposedly makes. Others had eyewitness testimony. But no clear photos, no feathers, no nests, no dead birds. In an age where every sixth grader carries a 12-megapixel camera in their pocket, the ivory bill remained mysteriously elusive. By 2021, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service had enough. They proposed removing the ivory-billed woodpecker from the endangered species list because, in their words, it was extinct. The backlash was immediate. Birders screamed, scientists objected, and suddenly teams were once again combing the swamps of Louisiana and Mississippi, trying to get one last confirmed sighting before the door slammed shut. And in 2022, a group led by Project Principalist claimed to have done it. They dropped a report with new photos, drone footage, and spectrograms of woodpecker sounds. It wasn't peer-reviewed, and critics again said it looked like a pileated woodpecker. But the team stood firm. Their conclusion: ivory bills might still be alive, just living in incredibly remote, flooded forests, where human foot traffic is basically non-existent and mosquitoes are in charge. Now you might be wondering, why all the fuss over one woodpecker? It's not exactly a T-Rex, but the ivory bill has become something bigger than itself. It's a symbol of what we've lost, and what we might still save. If it's alive, it proves that nature can sometimes cling on, even when we give it zero reason to. If it's not, well, we really gave it a good shot, and made a lot of noise doing it. But until someone captures high-res footage, or, better yet, finds a nest or a body, the ivory-billed woodpecker will continue its ghost bird status, flapping somewhere between legend, stubborn hope, and ornithological obsession. Plesiosaurs were real. Ocean-going reptiles from the age of dinosaurs, armed with flippers, long necks, and a bad attitude. They vanished around 66 million years ago. Case closed. Unless Loch Ness has something to say about it. The modern Nessie myth kicked off in 1933, followed by that famous, and fake, surgeon's photo showing a suspiciously puppet-like head bobbing above the water. Since then, sightings of long-necked, humpbacked lake monsters have cropped up all over the world. Canada, Japan, Zimbabwe. If it's got a lake, someone's seen a plesiosaur in it. Here's the issue. Plesiosaurs were saltwater animals. Loch Ness is freshwater. They breathed air, so they'd need to surface often, yet somehow no one's ever gotten a clear photo, DNA sample, or fossil. The loch also isn't big enough to support even a small breeding population of these supposed marine reptiles. Not unless they've learned to eat tourist boats and disappointment. Still, in 2022, scientists did find fossils of freshwater plesiosaurs in Morocco. So the "they only lived in oceans" excuse? Gone? Does that prove Nessie is real? Absolutely not. But it added just enough fuel to the cryptid fire to keep the internet arguing. Most Nessie sightings are probably sturgeon, logs, waves, or wishful thinking. Every so often, someone gets a sonar blip or a blurry video, and the whole plesiosaur debate resurfaces like clockwork. But if these things were really still around, someone, anyone, would have definitive proof by now. Still, it's hard to let go of the idea. A prehistoric predator dodging extinction in a Scottish lake? Weirdly comforting, weirdly persistent, probably fake, but fun to imagine. Not every extinct animal makes headlines. Some just quietly ghost science, then reappear like nothing happened. Rude. Take the Fernandina Island tortoise. Last seen in 1906, declared extinct, then casually rediscovered in 2019. A single female was just chilling on a volcano in the Galapagos like, where have you been? Or the Lord Howe Island stick insect, thought to be gone since the 1920s after rats invaded its tiny island. Then in 2001, scientists found a small population clinging to life on a rock called Ball's Pyramid. Literal insect comeback story. The Cuban solenodon? Poisonous mammal with a flexible snout. Declared extinct in the 70s, rediscovered in 2003. Clearly not a fan of fame. There's even an ancient insect, Protodiplotis, a type of earwig believed to be extinct for 100 million years, now turning up preserved in amber. Proof that some bugs just refuse to quit. The pattern? We're not as good at spotting extinction as we think. Whether it's deep jungles, remote islands, or underwater caves, animals keep slipping through the cracks. Maybe they're rare. Maybe we're just bad at looking. Either way, every rediscovery reminds us, extinction is a label, not a guarantee.